Hello and welcome to Watch From Home Theater, our little corner of the internet where we get to watch movies even while we're apart. I'm Clint Gage, and tonight we'll be watching the anime classic, one of the all-time greats, Spirited Away. And we've got a very cool guest. But before we get to that, we will be showing a few clips throughout the show tonight, but we won't show the whole movie. So go get your copy of Spirited Away queued up to the very beginning. If you don't have it, if you don't have your own copy, it's also streaming on HBO Max. And if you're not currently signed up for HBO Max, go sign up for a free trial. There's a link to do that in the description, and you can go get that taken care of. So while you guys go do that, let me also introduce, joining me tonight, IGN's Nick Limon is here. Nick, how's everything going over there?
Yeah, pretty good. Am I the cool guest? I'm so excited. I've never been presented as such.
I would say you are a cool guest, but you're not the cool guest. The cool guest tonight is from All Elite Wrestling, but most importantly, huge fan of Spirited Away. It's Kenny Omega. Kenny, what's up, man?
Hello. So great to be here. Thank you for having me on today.
How are you doing?
Very fortunate to be the guest.
The guest.
The special guest.
Yeah.
The special guest, not just the guest. It's the special one. I don't get to be the special guest,
Right.
So it's all you.
And you
The
wore your
important
best jean jacket for the occasion too, and a lot of buttons on it. You know, look at me, just like Redcon one shirt.
To match the keyboard that I switched the show with. You got to have equal amount of buttons.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you had a denim keyboard.
That too.
Would have been
you
also
can't
weird.
see it.
Well, we can't talk jackets all night long, but Kenny, just general question to start out with. How did you end up loving Spirited Away? Where does it rank for you, first of all, I guess, in terms of anime?
When we're talking anime movies, it's an easy top 3 for me. It's one of those timeless classics when you talk about movies that you can watch, whether you're a child, teen, adult, whether we fast forward the clock 50 years in the future, you can still go back and watch a movie like Spirited Away and really appreciate everything in it. And very few films, very few anime films as well, have been able to accomplish such a feat. Like, we're talking the same type of class as, like, say, a Back to the Future or E.T. or Terminator 2. You know, we're talking this class of film in the anime genre. So Spirited Away, one of the all-time greats, and I never thought that I would like Spirited Away. When I was in high school, people, they would talk about, if there is one anime movie that you need to watch, it's Princess Mononoke. So I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a shot, and I'm going to see just how much I'm going to like or not like these anime films. This is before knowing what I liked on this planet, and I gave it a shot, and I'm not gonna lie, and people are gonna hate me for this, possibly.
Careful.
But I just thought it was okay. You know, I thought, I thought, okay, I'll stick with my blood sports. I'll stick with my Predator and my Total Recalls. It was okay, but I don't quite see the hype. If there are other films like this, maybe I'll get around to watching them. Maybe not. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So when a friend at the time had gave me Spirited Away, I held on to it for like a good 4 months until finally I had an evening to myself, and I thought, let's put it in and watch it. And the world felt so alive, and the experiences and the emotions and the character development, they resonated. And when I go back and have these fond memories of that time when I saw this 20 years ago, they still exist deep within. So it's definitely a top 3 movie for sure. For animated.
Yeah, that sounds real familiar too. Like I've never really like dove into anime a ton, but this is one that really this is one that I'm just like, yeah, this is just a great movie. Like, regardless of what category you want to put it in, it's just great. And I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't seem to age at all, like those other films you mentioned.
No. And like, I was a guy who was just really into just pure unadulterated action. I was like I said, it was like I was a Bloodsport guy. I was Rocky 4, Mortal Kombat 1. The movie came out. I was all about it. My very first animated movie where I kind of fell in love with anime and wanted to try watching more movies was Ninja Scroll. If that sort of gives you an indication as to what I was kind of expecting out of my next animated movie feature. So to have something completely, I wouldn't want to say opposite of that, because there's a lot of action in the movie, but something that isn't quite as grotesque and something isn't quite as extreme as Ninja Scroll, and of course a complete different animation style as well.
And I think, like you, most of America's general introduction to anime was through something like Ninja Scroll. So there was that kind of correlation people had of like, oh, anime is just, gratuitous violence where people get ripped apart and shredded. So I think Spirited Away was the first time, we had seen My Neighbor Totoro and Princess Mononoke in a non-ideal scenario release in the US early on before Spirited Away, but Spirited Away really marked the first time that like, oh, this isn't like, I think it kind of helped shed the consensus that anime is just gratuitous violence and it's just an animated film. And this isn't, it's like, it feels like it belongs in the Disney vault to some extent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, guys, let's get to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Let's get to it. I think let's get to it. So hopefully you guys have had enough time to get yourself all queued up over there. So here's your last chance. And just a reminder, wherever you happen to be watching this, down in the comments section, be sure to leave your questions, and we will try to get to them as many as we can throughout the show. So get your thumbs hovering over that play button. Everybody set? And 3, 2, 1, play. Great. Guys, when was the last time you watched? Yeah, it's amazing. I do love that little sketch. When was the last time you guys have seen this film?
Ooh. I would say 2006.
Oh, it's been a minute. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think
I should also say we are. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kenny.
I was gonna say, I watched it when it first came out in 2001, and then I used it as a way to introduce my friends to animated films, in 2006. It's a good gateway drug, I would say.
It really is.
It's gonna stink. I liked my old school.
I do love how this opening scene, and I should also say we're watching the English dubbed version instead of the subtitled version here. Nick's shedding a tear for that.
I only watch the subs of my anime.
Sure.
No, it's fine. I think that the Disney has done a fantastic job, and G Kids have done a fantastic job of actually casting in the the English dubs of all of the Studio Ghibli films. I think that all of their casting is just pretty stacked for every movie, understandably so, because it is a big budget feature.
Just her parents here, I believe, is Michael Chiklis and Lauren Holly, right?
Yep.
I do love that is a really quick opening scene of just a kid in the car with her parents, and you get everything you need for the entire movie. Like you get the dynamic between the child and her parents. You get all the backstory that you need. They're having to move to a new town that we're just going to have to get used to it.
Look, there's our house.
Then you have
just
the
quality
typical
filmmaking.
Typical Miyazaki leaving the city.
This road should get us there.
Honey, don't take a shortcut. You always get us lost.
I love this scene right here. This is I think the standby that Miyazaki just loves to force his team to animate of driving a car through a heavily forested area at crazy frame rates, because this is just straight up a scene from Miyazaki's first movie, Castle of Cagliostro, where Lupin is just riding his car and getting hit in the windshield with all the leaves and stuff. It's such a good going back to my early days of filmmaking. It's a fun little surprise.
I mean, it would be just so easy to have a smooth ride through the wilderness, but he's showing, the bumps in the road, the water splashing from the tires, the petals falling from the flowers, even some leaves getting stuck in the windshield wipers. There's such attention to detail that you don't see in other works of animation. Really is incredible. and all hand drawn.
Hand drawn, and it's I think a very stylized choice of use of 3D animation versus 2D.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we see a 3D animated thing or a stationary thing, it feels almost otherworldly, like that statue that's blocking their path. It feels like it doesn't belong, which feels very like a profound choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just it's so quiet too. Like and especially coming on the heels of that, like driving too fast through the woods, and just taking a moment to breathe and be quiet is such a rare thing, especially in 2001.
It's all right.
Absolutely, it was a storytelling device that Miyazaki had used in a lot of his films to always sort of emphasize the silence in between the moments of action and activity. And you know, now more than ever, watching this over with you guys, I'm kind of realizing just how important it is from stage one, act one. And as a performer myself, I'll probably learn a thing or two today.
Yeah, I think that the realness of life that Miyazaki wants to capture isn't the big bombastic moments. It is the breath in between those moments that I think Miyazaki's really shooting for. And I think he knocks out of the park.
Well, also it really draws focus to Chihiro here too, and it makes it her movie right off the bat, because the moments of silence that you're getting are from her perspective and her experiencing the wind and her watching her parents like walk away from her, and which, by the way, her parents are the worst. I love it. It's such an effective.
One thing I will say, as someone who had seen this now, this will be for my third time. Third time through, I've been to Japan and spent the better part of a decade there, and I remember the first 2 times going through it, I did have a curiosity and I did have a fascination in sort of the personality of the parents, the fashion, what motivates them. And now that I have an understanding more of the culture of Japan and how a fatherly figure, a motherly figure is supposed to act and how common this really is, it really is. I can tell now, especially, that this is all meant just for Chihiro, and this isn't meant to have any sort of special meaning to the parent relationship to Chihiro, as odd as that may sound. This is supposed to be a very common relationship between parent and child.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting too, because and we can talk a lot about culturally, anime. Like I grew up in the States, and I didn't get a lot of anime, and I never got super into it. And then now I've got 2 small kids. As a parent, like watching this sequence, it's nails on a chalkboard to me. The dynamic between the two, which is like obviously culturally, I come from a very different place, so it's interesting to watch this now as a parent, whereas before, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I key in on at this point, which is I don't know, it's one of these movies that's so incredibly open-ended, and it's a reader. Nick and I were talking about it being kind of a reader response sort of film.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, Miyazaki gives you so much time to ponder these scenes. I remember my thought process of even just this walk through this gorgeous scenery. I thought, Chihiro is clearly going to be a strong-willed hero in our story, and it made me think, looking at the father, and he's of taller stature, looks like he was strong, an athlete. I was thinking, like, maybe. Are we going to get to know him a little more? Are we going to hear about his sporting background? What is the mother going to be like? And in the end, it's really all for naught. But you do, through their actions and through just the way that they react in their environment, you get to know them without them having to actually go out and say it.
Right.
Even just the father not wearing the typical white dress shirt with the pen in the front pocket. His dress suggests a certain type of personality that he has.
He's what, a kaishain, an office worker.
A kaishain, yeah. You'd think, yes, yeah. I mean, when you look at the way that you look at how he dresses here, it's like he's probably like an electrician or something. He's not. He doesn't sit in a cubicle typing on a keyboard. He does something. He does
does work
something
with
out
his
of
hands.
the ordinary. Yeah.
It's interesting too, thinking about all of the thought that went into his backstory, and I'm sure that somewhere, when they were conceiving of the film and his look and all that, I'm sure they had those conversations about what exactly he is. But then they don't talk about it explicitly in the film at all, which is great.
Anybody?
I believe everything is meticulously selected, including, let's show that gigantic fish head. You know what I mean? Let's show these mini chickens or whatever.
Hey, that looks great.
I wonder what this is called.
There are things that you don't really give a second thought to in the moment, but there's a purpose for everything.
I don't want any.
And going back to that whole like reader response thing, like I've always likened Miyazaki to like some of my favorite filmmakers who believe that, yeah, I have an intention behind the story that I'm telling here with the visuals that you're seeing, but really it doesn't matter what I think it's about what my viewers think. So like if you're viewing it through the Miyazaki lens, through the cultural zeitgeist of Japan, this is fresh off the heels of the 80s economic boom in Japan, and since then we've seen it kind of go down the drain in the late 90s, early 2000s, where we came across the lost decade in Japan. And what better signifier than that than two adults who are just engorging themselves through greed and gluttony while their child watches on haphazardly. And what we'll see later on is, the daughter now having to pay for the sins of the parents, the generation that came before. And it's like, well, now you have to do all the work because your parents are pigs now. That was in the interview that I'd read with Miyazaki, he had stated that the businessmen who prospered during the bubble economy, they sort of resembled pigs over the years, that they just kind of became comfortable and complacent and just kind of gross ultimately. And that's what I think he does a bang up job doing here, like showcasing that kind of gluttonous greed.
Even to this day, those who are able to live off of that wealth, they still enjoy staying out until the wee hours of the night and just ordering plates and plates and plates of food. And there's no limit to how much they eat and how much they drink. There's no thought put into what they're consuming. It's all for the purpose of just getting what they believe is they have earned.
There's something interesting about food and about eating throughout the entire movie. Like that's a thread that is touched upon like at stages throughout this movie, right up until the end too. And I mean, obviously starting right there with them just going to town on that buffet, which is like in terms of portraying gluttony, like it's such a good. It reminded me of the scene in Lord of the Rings, in Return of the King, when Denethor is just like chewing at like all of the gross spittle and
fucking taking the bite of the chicken drums and throwing it behind him, taking another bite and throw it behind him.
That's the great thing about anime is you can grab an entire duck and just like rip it in half.
Yep.
And I love that visual of Haku blowing the flower. I think in the hands of a worse storyteller, later on they'd be like, oh, I cast a flower spell, which kept you safe from the evil spirits. But, Miyazaki just trusts you to be like, he did some magic, and now we're off to the races. Stuff is happening, and I love that about it. So there's no explanation. You just understand innately.
Oh, this is such a good
review. Yeah, the revelation. Yeah.
A pig with that haircut, man. That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Rocksteady, man. Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah. Right. Just that arm coming out of the fog it's just terrifying too. Like it's
It captures the feeling of being lost and you can't find your parents in the mall.
Absolutely.
Well, and
I feel like it captures the otherworldliness because the animation style of these characters that exist in this other world almost doesn't jive with Chihiro's character art, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's more wispy, more ethereal. It feels like it belongs in another plane.
Yeah, they have a different physics. Like they all move a little differently than she does.
Yep.
like the 3D versus the 2D that we saw in the opening, there is a distinct visual difference. Yeah. And then
That's what I too.
what a cool reveal.
Yeah. I mean, talking about, sort of the lack of explaining, like the exposition about, the flower spell, that he just does a thing and expects us to go along with it. I mean, that at this point we are so thoroughly with our main character, with Chihiro, that like this sequence right here, like as scary as that was, like running through the town as all the spirits are coming out and her parents just turned into pigs. It's this spot right here where she's like huddled by herself on the edge of the river that I think is actually the most terrifying. And that doesn't work if you're not as lost as she is. So like all of the stuff that we've seen so far, if it had explanation, this scene right here wouldn't mean anything really.
Right.
But now look at the art style shifted. Now the ethereal world has become more concrete, and now Chihiro is started to become wispy and ethereal, which is so cool. It's storytelling through visuals, which is not a thing that I think a lot of live action cinema can do particularly well.
It's certainly a very difficult task to accomplish, and it's people have tried to do it through CG, but I really do feel that it's through art like this where it really becomes apparent, where you can really feel the emotion, the conveyed the conveyed purpose of why this is all happening.
Don't be afraid.
I feel like if this was in sort of like a rudimentary Shrek type of 3D animation CG, like we had spoken before, a movie that came out in the same year, would it have been as effective? Probably not.
Don't worry. It won't turn you into a
Yeah, it's Shrek and Monsters Inc. came out in 2001 as well.
I remember in its own way, that was really groundbreaking because of how much they had to give life to the single hairs in Monsters Inc. and how they animated a certain large portion of the hair on.
Very, very different movies trying to do very different things.
Right.
Yeah, Sully's fur blowing in the snow and all that stuff.
Sully, yeah. Mike with the eyeball, right? Yeah.
Right.
It is pretty fascinating, though, that Shrek and this released in the same year because they're such two tonally opposite different takes on fantasy. Whereas I think Shrek is very cynical. It's very, it's fun and it's for kids, but it's the cynicalness that I think would have driven someone like Miyazaki up the wall. I think the thing that a lot of Studio Ghibli films do a good job of capturing is childlike wonder and whimsy. And I think that going back to the art style, I think the hand-drawn animation really complements that whimsy. It feels like a storybook, whereas in Shrek, the opening of that movie is literally him ripping a page out of a storybook and wiping his butt with it. So it's just like, oh, this tells me everything I need to know about an American take on fantasy versus a Japanese take on fantasy.
Well, there's certainly a timeless quality to the hand-drawn animation. Like, if you see a CG animated film, you know that it was made since 96 or whatever. It's a recent film, but like this could have been from any time.
Absolutely. Yep. And part of that is just due to the absolute care that the artist put into the film itself. There was no half-assed lazy efforts that got made into a full-length feature film during that time, especially if you're working for Miyazaki. He pushed his artists very, very hard. Again, I was shocked to see that this film was made in 2001. It could have been 1993. It could have been 2019. I would not know. Especially watching this feed that we have here. It's gorgeous in every frame.
How's it holding up? You haven't seen it in a while. Is it as good as you remember?
Absolutely. No, and like I had said, for someone now who is kind of come off of living in Japan for the better part of a decade, I'm appreciating very little details. Like it sounds so odd, but just how the stools were aligned in the marketplace and how many there were and how they assembled the food and you know the bridge and the architecture in these small sort of in these villages and towns. I got to do a lot of traveling, not as much to places like these as I'd wanted to, but having that limited experience and now seeing it here, it's like how accurate it is and how just fantastical it is. Now that you add this sort of ghostly element to it, it's just as
Sorry, I took a breath.
it's just as magical as it is in this scene as it is almost in real life. You just have to add the ghosts and talking frogs and magic spells. It's incredible.
That's all you have
But
to
I
add.
think
Just some talking
I think
frogs and
that's
some
the
magic
beautiful
spells.
that's the beautiful part about these kinds of stories. It's the hidden fantasy that, you know, who's to say that this magical world doesn't exist in real life?
Right.
Maybe
Right.
maybe
That's
we're
why
just
it's
not
so
looking
easy to
hard
believe.
enough. And
Uh-huh.
and I think that's the magic of the movie. It reminds me a lot of something like Pan's Labyrinth, where it's just the
Right.
fantastic is just out of view, but you have to have the childlike wonder to see it, which is
Yep.
cool.
Kawaji?
Yeah, I mean, like from the beginning scene to now, the only thing that I have seen, aside from a few of the spiritual characters that seemed out of place, genuinely, was the ship that docked, where it's just full of the lantern lights. I've never seen anything like that in real life, but everything else is so believable. It's almost like you want to see it, and you would believe it if you saw it now. So maybe it aids in the storytelling of, yes, this could exist. This all does exist, and this could exist,
Mhm.
which is a cool feeling.
And I think it's,
I don't
you
feel
know,
like I'm
going
being
back to
told a
what
tall tale.
Chihiro's father said, like, oh, this must be one of those abandoned amusement parks. Like, I swear I saw
Right.
that boat. I swear I saw that boat at Tokyo Disney Sea, but it's just like it feels like it's a Japanese take on a Western boat or something, like a ferry
Yes,
boat,
It
which
does,
is just
yeah,
like,
it does
how
have
do I
like
make
a
a
like
Disney
a
version?
Midwestern riverboat kind of thing on the Mississippi type of vibe. But while we're talking about your time in Japan, Kenny, we got a question from Panda Board Productions, who's watching on Cinefix. Asks, I'm curious, with spending a lot of time in Japan, are there any things you'd want to see get more recognition in North America? Anything from Japan that you want to see get a little bigger over here in the States?
Oh, I mean, it's a very good question, because I mean, for me, simple things that still exist out there, like there's still a very large community for analog. I love being able to go to Tsutaya in Japan and be able to actually rent a DVD. You know what I mean? Like you would be able to at Blockbuster Video had they still been able to exist. I would love to see a more reliable, safe public form of transportation, like how the train systems are in Japan. Very, very reliable. If you want to get to some place and make sure you're there on time, not a minute too late, not a minute too soon, you take the train. It's so odd how you'd think it would be more comfortable to take a taxi, a limo, your own vehicle. No, it's always the safest bet if you need to be somewhere by a certain time to take the train. And it'd be great to have something like that here where I live in America or in Canada.
Right.
And the stations are all 3 minutes, 5 minutes apart from each other. It's not just like one train that takes you an hour away and then you get off. It's the most relied upon form of transportation in all of the cities. We're talking strictly Tokyo, but it's in general. Yeah, a lot of train transportation and a lot of bicycles too. I love that because riding a bike, I wish I could ride a bike more. It's a great way to stay in shape.
There's very
For
little
an old
stopping
man-
you. I think.
old man with crickety old knees like me.
Yeah.
And I guess now that we're on the topic, I could even say there's a lot more privately owned businesses in Japan. You can just take a walk, and there'll be little hole-in-the-wall restaurants, hole-in-the-wall, cafes, and your favorite cup of coffee may be in a place that only exists in a certain part of town that's only open from 12 till 4 p.m. It's not necessarily going to be a Starbucks. You can find a Starbucks anywhere. You can find a McDonald's anywhere, but your favorite activity, pastime, hangout joint, it's probably not going to be a chain in Japan, which is very cool.
That is cool. Trains, mom and pop shops, and analog stuff. I'm with you.
Yeah. And it's stuff that I hope really always sticks around. And I know now, like, much like the Blockbuster, Tsutaya shops, they're closing down and they're making way for more westernized chains like your Starbucks, like your McDonald's. But I'll always do the best that I can when I'm there to try to support the mom and pop shops, because I don't want those to ever go away. And those really always kind of give you a sense of being in a different place than where you came from.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So if you're just tuning in, we are watching Spirited Away with Kenny Omega. If you want to catch up to where we are, there's a little timer down in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We're about 25 minutes in, and Chihiro is meeting Kamaji down here at the boiler guy. This character, with his arms and how they, this is just a fascinating character in so many ways.
Yeah.
Kamaji really strikes me as the Miyazaki stand-in. He is Miyazaki, and he's like, what are you doing here? Why are you wasting my time? Get back to work harder. It's very much like he's the one who keeps the bathhouse in working order, which rules.
In a way, too, I sort of feel he's representation of just your traditional Japanese worksman, where the amount of work that he's able to get done, he must have 6 to 8 arms to do it. Yeah, the traditional Japanese artisan, who takes what he does very seriously, he takes his job very seriously, and he's getting an obscene amount of work done at an incredible rate that makes me wonder, are you even human?
It makes you wonder, does he sleep? What happens, when can he nap? When can he eat? The bathhouse is working, so what's going on? If he's not doing it, what's happening? And then you see the wonderful, again, the fantastic. If a Spider-Man literally running a bathhouse isn't fantastic enough, you have these little coal creatures.
Yeah, little critters.
Which are adorable.
Yeah, it's soot that he cast a spell on to bring to life.
Yeah.
And it's just soot, right? Little black balls with googly eyes, but you like them. They're cute. You don't want.
Oh, they're adorable.
You don't want them to accidentally step on them. Yeah, you don't want them. You want them to get squished. You don't want them to be mistreated. You feel something for every character.
But I've never considered anthropomorphic coal or soot to be cute. But here we are. This is in the way that only Miyazaki can, Him or Isao Takahata.
About the boiler, which is, it's got a face. In the wide shot of the room, you can see the boiler, and there are 2 gauges where eyes should be, and there's another one down here by the mouth, and so there's a personality to the boiler, and it's not scary. It's like a welcoming thing, which is unusual. There's that iconic sort of little kid sneaking down to the basement and being afraid of the furnace kind of imagery. That's not happening. Yeah, it's the Home Alone imagery, but it's not happening. This is a friendly space, and Chihiro's not scared in this scene either. She's interested and curious and a little weirded out, I think, but I don't think it's scared.
I also think it's the first time we've seen her not entirely afraid of what's happening, which is interesting, because I think I would be the most scared talking to a Spider-Man.
Talking to a spider guy? Well, and active too. She's making choices and doing things, and
she's feeling.
And I just love how they're watching.
These guys working.
She's such a just throw it in and run away.
And then the funniest.
Yeah,
you give an.
Here's another sort of. Yeah, here's another kind of master class of visual filmmaking. There's no dialogue there about oh wait, you took his coal? Like, well, you're gonna take my coal too. It's just like, just the energy that they give all of those things. It's like, you know exactly what's going on. It's hilarious.
I think that is just a small inside Marxist joke from Miyazaki, who grew up Marxist. He goes, "What if I made a work joke in a kids movie? Like, so good."
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I on rewatch of this movie recently, because in quarantine I was just like, oh, I'm gonna rewatch all the Miyazaki movies and see if I can learn more from them this time around. And the one thing that stuck out to me about this is that it feels like the most out of all of his movies, the one that feels most like a Greek myth, in that it feels like Odysseus in the Odyssey trying to go home, but he can't go home. She can't rescue her parents until she completes like 3 major tasks, and I think this is task 1 that she just accomplished, is proving her usefulness as a working, capable body.
You're in trouble. You're the one everyone's looking for.
She's my granddaughter.
And here's some more food. There's all these moments that are turning points for Chihiro that are spoken through like a full mouth. It's her parents eating at the thing, talking about like, oh, you gotta try all this, and then now, you know, Kamaji is sending her on her way towards her next goal through a mouthful of his lunch.
She's the head honcho here.
Give me that. Come on.
David Ogden Steers, by the way, the voice of Kamaji, who was also the voice of Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast.
What a good fit.
Even manage a yes ma'am or a thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I've always wondered, what's her name again? Her like mentor, I can't remember.
Need your shoes or your
But she just, is she human? Is she a spirit? Because she just ate a
Oh,
newt, so
Lynn?
I've always wondered, like, is she an entity of some
Yeah.
sort?
You idiot. You know he's really sticking his neck out for you.
Yeah, Lynn seems human. She looks human, obviously.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe she's like a
But also-
like a kitsune
Also, she's a
spirit, like
sucker
a fox
for-
or something.
Yeah.
I do always
Also
wonder
something
with this
interesting is-
movie. Oh, go for it, Clint. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna say there's something also at play here that, like, the idea that kids are just expected to be equipped for grown-up things. Like that's another idea that sort of this movie bounces back and forth between grown-ups expecting a kid to be equipped for anything, and then kids actually being capable if allowed to prove themselves.
And you notice a very, very different physical response to her presence after she shows that she is capable of working and helping around the boiler. And, you know, you finish the scene kind of thinking, hey, Kamaji's a cool dude. What a friendly guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it makes one wonder, you know, what is the message here?
Okay.
And then the little pieces of soot getting stars, you know, little tiny stars as their compensation.
Yeah, those weird little soot candies.
Right, exactly.
Sorry, sir. This elevator doesn't go any higher. You'll have to take another one.
I don't know much about like Shintoism or the Buddhist religion, but I just imagine that this is a wonderful blend of actual like gods and just stuff that Miyazaki's like, oh, it'd be fun if we had a radish god.
This, and like going through this bathhouse is just this fascinating array of characters, and we don't really get to meet any of them. I know we spent some time with the radish spirit here in a second, but again, it's this great sort of journey that we're on with Chihiro. Like, we don't know any more than she does throughout this entire film.
Step up to the right, please, gentlemen.
Radish spirit's butt just hanging out.
But you know, like again, I think if this were an American thing, his crudeness and his nakedness would be played up for a joke, whereas this is very,
Oh,
it's very
He would have
wholesome and
farted already
sincere.
for sure.
From Lynn.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was just gonna say, yeah, there would have been a burp, a fart. He would have scratched something.
Yeah.
Show it to me.
Is this what you smell?
It's just very sincere, which I like.
Yes.
No way, Frog. I'm saving every last bite for myself.
Please, just a little bit.
I love that roasted newt is either currency or a drug at this point. And
Right.
possibly both.
How could you be so cruel?
Just some delicacy that only the highest citizen is able to get their hands on.
It's like Kamaji was able to bribe Lin to do something for it, and then this guy's just going bananas for it.
Yeah.
I love this shot. Just quietly riding up an elevator with a snoring radish spirit.
It's very Totoro-esque a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So with a hat, in place of the umbrella.
Little side eye.
Even the angle that they chose right there, like looking down past the radish spirit's nipple, like at her face all crunched up in there. There's something just like, it's not gross, but it's a little obscene.
Right, but we've all
just
been conditioned to accept situations like that. We've all been in an elevator.
Right.
We've all been in an airplane or bus or some place where maybe someone is a little too close for comfort, but you just have to grin and bear it. And that's life, I don't think there was any preconceived notions. She wasn't judging him at all. But as a viewer, you see it, and it's like, dang, this guy's largely in charge, and that flabby nipple is getting real close to her face,
Getting a little close to my face.
Yeah.
I just love how ornate Yubaba's office, like top floor, is. Just a very heavy Lupin the Third Castle Cagliostro. Someone with too much money lives and occupies this space.
Well, come in.
And then hard cut straight to her, just this wrinkly old mouth. And all the jewels.
The jewels on her fingers just are perfect. A perfect compliment to this character. It's so good. It's so smart.
Spinal injury there. She rolls to a stop.
Yeah. I always love the added scorpion effect there, just to show just how much momentum she had going into that room.
You're making a racket.
I love these little dudes.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, so there's been a lot written, and I've read a lot about, people watching Spirited Away and being like, I have no idea what this is about. And I think partially that's to do with it can be about whatever you see in it, like whatever you project on it. Like it's one of those kind of movies. But then also there's three bouncing heads. So I think it's easy to wait. What is happening here? But really, it's just three funny bouncing.
Yeah. Yeah. As a gamer, I always just assumed, hey, if they ever made this into a game, those guys are bosses. You know what I mean? I didn't
the mini
overthink
boss
their
before you get to the office.
Right. I didn't overthink their presence, but I'm sure there is a higher purpose, of course.
And you should be punished too.
I always thought of the old, the old saying, heads will roll. As a boss would say, if you don't do what he or she says. I don't know. Are they just casualties of people that had failed in the workforce? I don't know.
I could see you, Baba, being a person who said, "I will have your head for this if you fail."
Exactly.
And then she actually did.
Yes.
You made it this far, but
Those are all her old assistants.
Yeah, right. I totally could be. It's for sure lackeys. Like if I had the ability to make lackeys, definitely, absolutely 3 heads. Yes.
Please,
Then the zip.
Give me a job.
Don't start that again.
Please, I just want to work.
Don't say that. Why in the world do you think I should?
It's interesting, like, she also looked like she clearly looked inhuman when we first met her. But it's not until she flies. I mean, obviously she flies across the room, but when she lands in front of you, and you actually see the scale of her, and it's at that point it's like, oh, this is a really weirdly scary woman, or spirit, or demon, or whatever it is.
Until you breathe your very last breath.
Because you know that she's formidable, and you know that she's not great. But then she's standing next to Chihiro. You finally get the sense it's like, oh, there's something incorrect here.
And then there's like the keeping up of appearances. I feel like a lot of that was just an act that she put on to intimidate Chihiro, but then we see what she's really like with the baby. It's interesting because adults in this movie expect a lot of children, especially Yubaba. So it's very funny and ironic that we see Yubaba babies her baby and treats this giant baby as a giant baby instead of an adult.
Well, it also shades her a little gray, right? Like you meet her and you think, oh, here's the villain of the entire movie. And then she has this moment with her baby where she springs into action to coddle her baby. And so there's not, like right off the bat, you think the main villain of this movie is like, oh, I can actually sort of relate to that a little bit, or she's not all bad.
Definitely a redeeming quality that someone in the same situation or a similar situation, like say an Ursula from Little Mermaid, didn't have.
Right.
Totally.
Right. There's those broad strokes, scenery chewing villain that she started out as for a minute, But then, and she's like talking about an oath that she took, and she hates being nice all the time. Yeah.
Are you done yet?
It feels like there's a lot of unwritten rules about what's happening here. Like, I feel like she has to give her a job if Chihiro asks for work. And then the whole writing your name is, super old, like, mythic origin about magic and names and the power of a name. And, like in a lot of, like,
yes,
old cultures, you can command a demon if you know its name. And so I think there's something super interesting about that. Chihiro willingly gave up her name, and they give her a new one.
Yep. Yeah, it's much like in the Japanese culture where you don't really sign too many pieces of paper. You just use your stamp of your family stamp or whatever, and it just goes to show you the power of what that entails. So it's again a different take on culture, but very effective. You get the idea even as a Westerner what that meant at that moment.
There's weight to it.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you're right. And for me coming into this movie too, I feel like my read on it was so much about moving to a new place, being the anxiety over that, growing up, and changes happening that are out of your control, and how difficult it is and how much hard work it is, as we'll see with her moving forward here. But how much hard work it is to retain your identity and who you are, and it's so easy to let your new circumstances kind of steamroll you. And and then here's a story about a girl sort of hanging on to who she is, quite literally, in her name.
And how sometimes
which is something that.
Oh, I don't want to cut you off. Go for it.
Oh no! I was just something that, like, regardless of what culture you come from, I think that's something that you can relate to. It's certainly something that I can.
Come on.
Absolutely, and I think especially typically in Japanese culture too, with the office culture, salaryman culture. It's what you're willing to give up to exist among the masses of people, just to have a right to exist among the hustle bustle, and just to be a body amongst many. Which is why I think this dynamic right here is kind of really powerful. It almost looks like she's one of very few humanoids living in this area who still have some sort of form of originality and identity and humanity.
Here's your apron. You have to wash it yourself. Your pants.
It's almost like once you become a creature, you're kind of just existing in this world.
What about him?
And it's great too because we don't know a ton about what's going on, right? So then
No.
you start wondering about Lynn here. You start wondering, how long has she been here, and how does she know all this stuff, and what has her experience been? And we don't really get an answer for that, and we don't, because it's not her story at all. I mean, what's so interesting narratively about this movie is that it's so thoroughly Chihiro's story, and it never tangents into anybody else's story really at all.
Right.
Which is great.
I'm probably completely off base and wrong, but I think that's the beauty of the movie, is that you can have your own opinion and you might not be wrong. It's that I feel that the more human a character looks, the more of your humanity you still have in this world. So I think Lynn at one point was just like Chihiro, but she just remembers what she is and was able to separate her duties and her life from what she once was. And I think that's also why, our crow lady here, still carries the appearance of a very powerful and very well off rich old woman, is because I would imagine, if I were to guess, that she was once perhaps like Chihiro and just rose her way through the ranks to the very top of this world. It's good to have a theory.
Kind of distorted herself.
Yeah.
It's great.
I think you're off base
too. Like, this movie is so universally loved, right? Like it's hard to find a person that, even if animation isn't your thing and you just don't quite get it, like there's something about the movie that you can't deny, right? Like it's a gorgeous film. There are interesting characters. There's a lot of wacky stuff going on at minimum, right? And so the fact that this movie is so well regarded across, around the world, like there's something for everybody in this. But also, I think it speaks to that sort of open-endedness of it and that open to interpretation aspect of this movie, that everybody can project something onto this film and onto these characters in a way that makes you love it.
Yes.
So yeah, man, have more theories. Because I read some theories about this movie that I'm like, get out of here.
I mean, the thing is, it's upon first viewing now, in how many years that I'm seeing this and thinking, maybe that's it, and maybe that's why her parents so quickly became, pigs. Maybe that's why they took the shape of pigs that quickly, is because that's really, in the grand scheme of things, sort of what their presence embodies in this universe. It's not a punishment, or it's not exactly. That's who they are. That's the cogs they are in this machine, the spiritual machine.
And it just took a nudge to get them fully pigs too.
Exactly.
It didn't take much to get them.
Going back to the
those
beginning,
those little soot things are just the most adorable things. And now they're all besties. And I love it.
Going back to the beginning of the movie, we saw a glimpse of Chihiro's new home, which was very much like a model home, like a suburban type home where everything looks the same. So I also wonder if the parents of those homes were to go to this place, would they too become pigs? Because that feels like the parents aren't just, I don't think that the parents are bad. I just think that they are reflective of a certain group of people in Japanese culture.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
they're settling
feel that,
for mediocrity.
Right. If you were to say, in this animated movie, my parents would become pigs to someone of Western culture, that could be the greatest insult that you would ever say. But here, I do believe it conveys a different message. Absolutely. I think it was just to emphasize the gluttonous nature of how they spend their time and their riches.
And this film being made in a particular time, in a particular place, and then being watched at a different time in a different place, and for it to still have resonance and for it to still have, a meaningful way to interpret is, it just speaks to how good this is.
And that really is like the Japanese way. I mean, you have something you want to celebrate, you go out and you eat as much as you can, for an evening with your friends. You have a hard day at work. You go out, you eat, you drink as much as you can for the duration of that evening. I get it. You know, I can see it. I can see how they made that tie. But again, the real story, who knows? It's just I'm pulling at straws possibly, but
that's what's great about movies. That's what we love about movies. You can mean whatever you need it to mean.
Mm-hmm.
Here are your clothes. Hide them.
I thought they'd been thrown away.
You'll need them to get
He's
home.
giving her back her individuality, or at least saying, "Hey, don't lose this. This is important."
don't forget it. Like hide it. He's specifically telling her to hide it for now. And this one part of her old life that she was clinging to, that goodbye note with the flowers that she loved.
Yes.
That's how you
She's already forgotten her name.
I feel like there's also a Groundhog Day type scenario going here where not necessarily she's repeating the same day over again, but so much time has passed that we as an audience haven't been clued in because she's already forgotten her name. So, you know, how long does it have to take for me to lose my name, to forget what my name is, you know? That sort of question, like, I think when I first saw this, it terrified me because it's like, what do you mean she forgot her name? That's horrifying. She doesn't know who she is. She's been working that long. What's going on?
Well, time works a little different in a magical spirit bathhouse. So here's another.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I was just going to talk about food again. So
the constraint. Yeah, no, it's very true. It's obvious.
He's another turning point for her, and she's actually eating, and she's eating politely too, which is a difference.
Kind of. Hey, crying with a mouthful. Yes.
Just sobbing. It's sobbing through her food.
Those tears are beautiful. The giant globs of water just rolling down her face. It's so visually striking. And I do love the presence of food in this movie because I think the way the food is presented is super important about a lot of the underlying messages in this. You know, with the parents, it was just an excess of food. Later on, we'll see another representation of excess with food, but with Chihiro, it's usually something small and humble, like a rice ball, an onigiri or whatever. So, like, I don't know, there's something to that, I think. And I think food is always the bastion of humanity. You know, it is the thing that, you know, I might not know another culture, but I know that we could over the bond of food.
Absolutely.
Here's your answer to does Kamaji sleep?
Yeah, shit.
We all get quiet for this tender little moment where a Spider-Man puts a pillow on top of our hero. He drinks directly from a kettle. Look at that shot. Look at those rain clouds coming in. It's just gorgeous.
I just love seeing the bathhouse off. Just in a dormant state. And then we see the other world slowly come to life. It's beautiful. It's haunting. Everyone's waking up.
I was really worried.
I'm sorry.
There's also some interesting edits in this, like that one where there was a moment between, you know, Lin and Sin there where she said, "I was really worried about you. Where'd you go?" It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then she almost gets cut off as we move on to the workday, right? Like there's that moment of connection and of legitimate concern for one another that gets cut real short to go into this get into work montage.
That's frog work.
Orders from the top, so quit your complaining.
With John Ratzenberger as the assistant manager.
I think this movie was the first one that ever that I watched as a kid that I left knowing that there's much more than I interpreted. That this was the first time I ever felt like a movie was challenging me as a little kid. So the one thing I just remember my first viewing was just the importance of hard work and the importance of working with your hands, and how it's almost like a ritual or a rite of passage into adulthood of just,
Right.
hey, there's times to sleep, and then when it's time to work, it's actually time to work, and you roll up your sleeves and start cleaning. And that always stuck out to me about this movie, is just the overemphasis on hard work, which is, I don't think I've ever seen presented in a movie in American culture. A movie about hard work seems very strange.
And I think they made sure to be very diligent about showing that there wasn't really any form of slacking, and it wasn't tolerated to slack. Everyone has to do their job, and whether they get along with them, whether they're friends, whether there's a personal relationship, everyone's got to do their part. And if you're not doing it, or if you're not doing it fast enough, you got Buddy Boy over there with a mustache telling you to be quicker at it. Oh, Scorpion number 2.
There's another
Scorpion again.
Yeah.
She's bendy.
Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, it never really. The idea of slacking or the idea of not doing the job is never really an option. Like, it never really comes up. It's not. It's only an issue when she, at the very beginning, when she moves the coal for the little soot guys. That's really the only time it's kind of addressed. And I think in the West, we would get something like Annie, right? Like Little Orphan Annie is, I want my floor to shine like the top of the Chrysler Building or whatever. And it's just the idea of putting a kid to work like that is. I mean, obviously the situations are different, but like that's the portrayal that we get here.
Now that you mention it, it's very curious that you bring that up. Is that when she took the coal from the soot, and the soot realized that it could get away with slacking, they all took the option to slack at the same time. So it's almost like no one even has that option. But if they had it, oh boy, they would love to take it.
But as soon as they do, they hear about it from the moms.
Oh yeah.
The first person to do it is, something that is subhuman, something that is literally the after product of something more productive, something that's actually useful, but it's the after product of it that slacks, which is funny. Yeah, I think if this had been an American film, it'd be about, the struggle between slacking and working hard, where very much this is just about the expectation of working hard.
We have an intruder. I'm not quite sure. Figure it out and report back.
I love it.
Wow, Sam,
like I would love to have that intercom at some point. Like, a skull that actually chattered. Yeah. I love the sound design of that thing coming out too. Like that old creaky, there's like a lot of weight to it. Thanks, Lynn.
It's supposed to be good for you. And with water this murky, you can't see all the sludge in the tub. Yank it again when the bath is full. It'll stop. You can let go of the rope now. I'll go get us some breakfast.
Okay.
Just again, we're left with this quiet little moment.
Yeah.
Horrific.
Like that's why I think you couldn't get that effect in a live action version of this, right? Like I think if that thing is actually standing in the corner of a room, that's a jump scare.
Yeah.
No Face is, I think, to this day, still the most challenging thing about this movie. No Face is a character that I truly just don't understand in any way, shape, or form. But that's what makes it so interesting. I think I don't think he is meant to be understood. I don't think it is meant to be understood. It is just a faceless entity that is. There's something terrifying about not being able to read someone's face.
Right. Pull that rope.
It's a stink spirit.
And apparently it's an extra smelly one. He's headed straight for the bridge.
Just the panic that overtakes everybody. This giant thing of sludge coming at you.
Something's fishy. That doesn't seem like a stink spirit to me. But we have no choice. Go greedy.
Yeah, No Face is.
Give him a bath.
It's one of those simultaneously, like he's spooky, but I think because it's animated, it's more of an unnerving thing than spooky. And
yeah, it's more of a curiosity.
Yeah.
Right. And even like the sound that he makes is not threatening. It's almost like a submissive kind of
He's like,
vocal. But,
Yeah, it's kind of suggestive.
He strikes me as a child with power, and I think that if you were to give a child the power that No Face has, you would get similar results.
Can we just quickly talk about? We can go back to No Face when we meet him again, but the way that Chihiro's hair goes like
It's
full
so good.
Like a cat.
pink
Yeah.
chocolate.
Welcome to our baths.
Yeah.
The nice customer's money.
Yes, ma'am.
This whole body shudder might be my favorite animation. You're just
Dude, look at her hair just moving
Yeah.
up a little bit.
Get him to the bath.
This way.
her physical
Not-
form is actively disturbed.
Yeah. These little bubbles popping.
What a gnarly looking creature.
Yeah. I want to know if there was a draft of this where Miyazaki was like, nope, grosser. And then they escalate. There was a fairly tame version of the stink monster at some point.
I would imagine that they had multiple ideas on the cutting room floor, as to what would find its way in there.
I'd love to see alternate
Good at eight.
versions, but
Yeah, yeah.
and here's her
The setup of this
her
sequence-
second Herculean task.
And I like the setup of this sequence too because it establishes there's a viewing gallery, right? Like there's a walkway around the top where everybody can gather and kind of watch her pass this trial.
And it's looking more like Jabba the Hutt.
Mm-hmm.
Or kind of like Krang, maybe.
Krang, yeah.
Yeah. Pizza the Hut. Pick your lumpy
Yeah.
villain.
And it's strange that they built this guy up to be such a threat to the entire function of the spa, but you can't help but sort of hope he gets the bath that he's wanting.
Right.
And I felt like a measure of joy for him in enjoying his bath when looks at his tentacles or hands and
Yeah, like, even the fact that he comes up,
right?
yeah, even the fact that he comes up the first time and you can see his face, you can see a smile on his face,
yeah,
or it's not even technically a smile. It's not a frown.
It's again, it reminds me of that elevator scene with the rat. It's just like you get into these uncomfortable situations where a sense of professionalism has to prevail, and the person may not mean any harm, or he may not be a bad dude or man or woman. They just need your help, and
Yeah.
this is one of those scenarios where it may not be the most fun of jobs, but but sometimes it's what you got to do.
Oh no! That's our best herbal formula!
I do like that they see this as like I think it is very much an adult versus childlike view of, oh no, we wasted our best thing on this creature. Whereas
Right.
Yeah.
for her, it's like, oh, I just want to get this thing clean.
I do. She's also in talking about how much time has passed, and because she's not at all squeamish about going to work, and it seems like, oh, I got to find my parents, and I'm terrified of this new situation I find myself stuck in. Like that doesn't seem to be on her mind in this. It's just a task, and she's doing a good job. She's capable, and so part of it is the idea of losing your name and not remembering who you are or where you came from, but then also like who knows how long she's been doing this at this point.
Right.
And another moment for Yubaba to not be, twirling her mustache.
I do love her whipping out the cheerleader fan from nowhere.
The air traffic controller kind of.
Yeah, and really showing there's a reason why she's the woman in charge, and that it wasn't just by luck. She's seen it all, done it all.
And the crowd's gathering to watch. It's like a stadium for them.
Jeez.
Such a cool, all that disgusting stuff coming out of that cool looking green water. And it's like the water isn't like, that's a functional color too. It's weird to sort of split hairs about like the color of the water. It's like, because it's not the most pleasant looking water so much as it is just like, oh, that looks refreshing.
Yeah, it looks almost gelatinous and alive.
Right.
Well done.
For something telling you good job, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
And she got awarded a trinket for her success. Also super interesting that all of the trash is just man-made stuff.
Yeah. It's like he literally got stuck in a dump.
Yeah. A lot of Miyazaki's work, there is like an industrial versus nature at play, like a conflict that's underneath the surface usually. Nausicaa had it big time, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, along with Princess Mononoke. Castle in the Sky, it's very much, mankind has been a bit of a blemish on the earth. And true spiritualism and enlightenment can be reached when that's like pacified or rectified.
The radish spirit right there up front.
You did great. We made so much money. That spirit is rich and powerful. Everyone learn from Zen. Saki's on the house tonight. But first, hand over all the gold you picked up.
No face, just hanging out. Yeah.
He does look so lonely, though. He was left out of the celebration.
Dumpling for you.
Does.
What a day.
That's one of the things that's really interesting about the design of that mask too. Is like it's blank enough to where it's not anybody in particular, but there's enough feature to it to kind of read into.
Lights out, Lynn.
Right, you're never going to confuse that guy with the dude from Scream, that's for sure.
Sure. Although turning around and having him standing in the corner, could be the same effect.
Yeah.
I can picture him saying, "What's up?" Then the train gliding across water is one of the coolest visuals ever.
There's so much water. It looks like a sea.
What'd you expect after all that rain? I've got to get out of this place. Someday I'm getting on that train.
Just more eating at. This is probably the midpoint of the movie here. She's starting to kind of make the choice to be a little more active moving forward.
And it's a meal after a hard day's work.
What's wrong?
I don't know that
That's
I
a
would
little
eat
bit
a
of
stink
convenience
spirits
there.
gift like that.
Right, but I mean, and there's sort of the symbolism of an award always being something edible, and I think that she thought, hey, let's give it a shot. You know, everyone eats as a reward, as what we do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So let's eat this stinky nugget or whatever it was.
It doesn't even look appetizing. It's just like, I'm gonna assume that.
It's gold. Huh? What do you think you're doing? You're not
Terrifying.
there. The bat's closed. Get out, you. Get out of there.
That shift in music to like No Name's or No Face's theme is just kind of unsettling.
Are you giving them to me?
There's one thing. The music in this movie is pretty much, you know, there's music across the entire film, save for those random moments of silence where we're sitting with Chihiro. But then there's music constantly, and it's all decently pleasant, kind of natural sounding. Whoa!
It's
That's what you get with No Face.
Right.
Hey, boss, up here. I'm hungry.
Horrifying.
And I want you to serve me.
Well, and this is where we sort of learn something about No Face, right? There's nothing to him until he absorbs it from other people, is my read anyway.
And I think we sort of learn a little bit about the inhabitants as well, is that as soon as they're willing to help to work as a team to eliminate a problem or to tackle an issue, they are just as quickly tempted by food and greed as well. They all wanted to take the tiny little bits of gold off the ground, and of course Mr. Frog. I can't remember if he had a name or not, but just as quickly he was devoured, wanting more and more of the gold.
Going back to the whole No Face with no personality type thing, like he absorbs whatever personality of the person or thing he ingests, but also it's super telling that all of the things that he ingests are just driven by greed and gluttony. And so that's just how No Face interprets, oh, this is how I interact with other things, through greed and gluttony. This is just the way things are.
Well, and also it doesn't seem like there's any like sort of purpose or goal behind it for No Face either, because even like his whole character up until that point is literally just going, and then he takes on somebody's personality, and then he becomes this crazy gluttonous monster.
Yeah.
No Face is lonely, and so I think maybe this is just maybe me reading too much into it. In order to make friends, you have to be greedy and gluttonous, because that's what people, you know, all of these people gather for.
And has he had hair this whole time? Did I just miss that? Because that patch of hair, it's like a weird little No Face toupee, is maybe the scariest thing about him. Yeah.
It's the most unsettling thing about No Face.
Yeah. That's the thing that does not belong. I want to go there.
Yeah.
Like those cool cliffs over the ocean.
Looks like just a landscape someone painted and then put to film.
This is really cool. These paper birds attacking a dragon.
Such a cool concept. And even though it's animated, you can feel the force of their travel. Like you know
Absolutely.
exactly how fast they're going and what's going to happen if they catch up to you.
Yeah, and that they can do some serious damage, even as paper.
Yeah, the sound of the wind they're kicking up and the wings flapping and even the impacting there on her face.
It's just paper.
Such good sound design. The music again here, it shifts to this kind of heroic theme.
Yeah, like she
and
did the right
it's
thing
strange
taking care of
knowing-
her friend.
Yeah, and knowing what we know about all the characters, it doesn't really make a ton of sense because here's a moment of kind of tragedy. It's like, yeah, she helped, but also her friend's in trouble, and it feels like it wants
Hold still.
it would normally have a more dramatic
Now. You're going to be all right.
kind of score, but this is like a victorious kind of heroic type of. God, that blood splatter is so cool.
I mean, it's
That top window. I've got to get there before he bleeds to death.
something you'd see from a YouTube video or whatever. When a deer or a wolf steps in a bear trap, and when you finally unhinge the trap and help it, it gives you that snarl, but doesn't attack you, it just runs away. It's very
Just like,
appropriate.
all right,
reaction.
you let me go, but stay away from me.
Exactly.
Still in
but
a
I'm
bad
still
mood.
not completely trusting of this situation. Yeah. Remember hoping for some kind of interaction at first thought. Like, talk to each other. Come on. But
What are you doing?
seeing it now, this is far more appropriate.
Blood!
The way they treat blood in this movie is super interesting, and I don't really know what my read is on it, but it is something like I guess
Right.
maybe only humans do.
Yeah, I think it's tied to the same reason why they everything smells human. It's like, oh, you smell a human. They're sort of repulsed by it. And here he is, just wanting acceptance again.
Yep.
The only one he hasn't impressed.
I don't want any, but thanks. I'm sorry, but I'm in a really big hurry.
Very much a vibe. Everyone in the bathhouse is working to eat newts and tasty treats, whereas Chihiro is working to get her parents back. So, very interesting take because they're all workers. But I think that there is a commentary on maybe just what their end goal is as workers.
Wipe that smile off your face. You're still smiling.
Oh, mouth comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sound design too of No Face is like there's that gurgling kind of bubbly quality to it.
Yeah.
Those legs are really upsetting.
They gave him just the right amount of teeth for his mouth to be menacing too.
Right.
If he had a nice set of chompers, it wouldn't be as scary. I think for him to be kind of gappy and toothy here and there makes it all that more grotesque.
It gives his gaping maw a lived-in quality.
Yes. But it does look like it looks like he brushes though. There are white teeth.
Oh yeah. There's not like gunk sticking to him or anything.
No.
I mean, and here we are, an hour and changing in this movie.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, contrast that to the first time that she was so scared walking down steps when she first got it.
Yes.
And then now she's sprinting across a pipe to climb a ladder on the side of a building with nothing underneath her.
It's you.
Love you, Baba,
Baba's
bringing all the
design.
the clouds back with her too.
Her bird design is so good. Like when she just pulls up her little like shawl and then she just instantly becomes a crow. It's so good.
I love the complete lack of a plan. Like she's putting herself in danger, running across that pipe, scaling the side of a building, and then now she's just to be stuck like on a window ledge. This is one moment where we kind of know something that she doesn't, right?
Yeah.
We know there's something following her. We know there's something to those paper birds, but we're not sure what. But we also there's a new tension that's been introduced in this sequence because there's something happening that she doesn't know about. Which is the first time I think in this movie that something has happened that we've had any sort of extra knowledge that she doesn't have.
Right.
The layout of this room too is very once again evocative of Castle of Cagliostro. It's a Roman-esque circular room that's just held up by pillars, which is super interesting. That Miyazaki just seems to have a curiosity about that particular type of architecture and art design.
Yeah, I mean the columns being sort of a classical thing, right? Like the Greek and Roman, and if it's evocative of the Roman Empire and the height of that excess,
Hi, sweetie. Hi,
There's the throwback. I knew we'd see the baby.
No, I won't let you.
And the counterpoint, she was just dressing somebody down in the other room, and she comes in here and she's all schmoopy about her baby.
Go back to sleep now.
Just pile these pillows back on you.
Yep.
I can tell you when you have a kid, they tell you this at the hospital before you're allowed to leave. Do not let a child sleep that way.
Big baby. I'm in a really big hurry. You came in here to make me sick.
What an oddly funny, wow, you're a big baby.
I'm not a germ, I'm a human. Now would you please let go of me? You'll get sick if you go outside. So stay here and play with me. You won't get sick. Yes, you will. That's why I've never left this room. Staying in this room is what'll make you sick. Listen. Someone very important to me is terribly hurt. I've got to go right now.
This is such an interesting sort of peek behind the curtain of, the sort of the price of the coddling, I guess.
Yes.
The entitlement and the greed and the lack of development, because clearly this baby is older than a baby. It's still a baby.
Exactly.
Those heads are really versatile, right? Like they're sort of goofy comic relief in some parts, but that turn that they just did was creepy. Like when they turn around in unison and the baby just can't move without breaking something.
I'm not afraid of germs. If you don't play with me, I'll cry. Please don't cry. Just wait. Right now, or I'll start crying. Don't cry.
What a spoiled brat. Shut your big mouth. You're a bit of a porker, aren't you?
Yeah. This is a moment that legit threw me for a loop.
Can't you even tell me from your own mother?
Very odd.
It's a great. Well, I mean, it's also a great kind of moment of what the hell is going on.
Right.
You know, especially because, and we're back in for that whole sequence where we knew something was happening and we knew somebody was following Chihiro and we knew more than she did. And then now we're immediately back to, wait a minute, what the hell's happening?
Yeah, it's all a facade.
You tell anyone else and I'll rip your mouth out.
Who are you?
Zeniba, I'm Yababa's twin sister. It was nice of you to lead me straight to this dragon's hiding place. Now
I would kill to hear the sigh of relief that all of the Studio Ghibli employees must have breathed collectively when Miyazaki told them that her sister looks exactly like her, so they don't have to animate someone new.
That would have been hilarious, though, if it was originally, it was like, and a vastly different character shows up, and they were like, honestly, can they be twins, please? Like, we've drawn so many crazy-looking things so far, man.
There's a spell on the seal, and anyone who steals it will die.
No, you can't!
The baby getting a taste of its own medicine there.
Mm-hmm. But now the lackeys have become the coddled.
Oh, a paper cut.
Woo.
She's still taking care of him, too.
That line, I think, might actually only be in the English dub. That's a paper cut, she said when she got cut in half.
Paper cut, yeah.
That feels like a distinctly, like, English dub character choice, that someone was like, oh, we gotta have a joke here.
feels like a joke, right?
To alleviate some awkwardness.
Mm-hmm. I think that's always the biggest difference for me between a sub and a dub, is the addition of things that weren't there originally. Just to kind of punctuate, like, oh, well, we need some sort of catchy phrase before the villain goes down, you know?
We need another line for the toy to say when we pull the string on its back.
This looks serious.
So Kenny, we're over halfway through the movie now, and I'm curious too about having not seen it in so long and now watching it after your time in Japan. It's how's the experience different watching it now? And I guess in the dubbed version instead of the sub version too.
Right. I mean, we just sort of made reference to how there are some differences to how dubs are treated as opposed to subs. And I'm sort of trying to take it in myself too as to what characters am I enjoying hearing in this dub and which characters, am I kind of okay without. And I think Chihiro actually is doing a really great job, as our hero of the story. And in terms of how I view this now after spending the better part of a decade in Japan, it's making me miss having a full-time job there. Of course, I wish I could go back, and it's making me want to kind of sit down with some projects that I have wanted to watch and never got around to. I mean, I have time to watch movies every now and then, and lately I haven't watched any anime. So like, there's Tenkinoko, Weathering with You, I believe it's called.
Oh.
I've wanted to see that movie. Yeah, so, it's like after seeing something as fantastic as this, remembering like something more current like Your Name. I actually watched one on Netflix the other day. I think it was called Whisker Away. Yeah, it's making me wanna watch something more like this, and pay a lot more attention to it, like how we are right now.
Definitely check out Weathering with You. It's very good. It's very, very good.
Oh, it's very good? Okay, great. That's good to hear. I'm always watching series, but it's rare that I actually sit down with a movie, so I'd like to change that.
I like that movies are less of a commitment than, I'm trying to slowly work my way through Gundam 79, but it's also like 80 plus episodes, and I'm like, oh, this is going to take forever. But the movie, it's just 2 hours, and I'm good.
I'm a ridiculous completionist too. So like I wouldn't be able to stop until I'd be hate watching it by the end. Just be like, I have to be done with this. I do love here, and again, if you're just joining us, we're watching Spirited Away with Kenny Omega. We're about an hour and a half into the movie. There's a clock there keeping time in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. If you need to sync up with us, you can stream it on HBO Max. You can queue up your own copy at home. I do love this scene, though, and having seen her literally crash back into the boiler room and then wrestle a dragon into submission to save her friend's life, as opposed to the first job that she did, where she could barely carry that little piece of coal from one side of the room to the other. And so it's just like charting how capable she's become and putting it back at the same location. It's a really, really cool way to do that.
Also, our Spider-Man is communicating with her differently. He trusts her now. He respects
her. A lighter
her.
touch, right? Yeah.
Sen, I've looked everywhere for you.
Lynn!
There's blood everywhere. What's going on here? Who are those guys?
I picked up some new friends. See?
Everyone's looking for you. Yubaba is furious. Huh? The guy with all the gold turned out to be a monster called No Face. And he says that you let him into the bathhouse.
I did let him in.
Dude,
are you serious?
Taking responsibility for your actions.
He's a monster. He's already swallowed 3 people.
Like, clearly there's a problem with what she did, but she barely thinks twice about admitting or copping to it. Or
she makes the adult choice.
yeah. Again, it's that idea of like, children are capable if you let them, but like if you constantly either coddle them like Yubaba's doing, or you're expecting them to be more equipped than they actually are without giving a good example for them, like they'll come around. Like very capable.
What about No Face?
This movie was never like about an absolute moment of clarity where she's like, yes, I'm an adult now. This was a coming of age story, and here's your moment. This is where you get the proof. It's right here in this one line. It's very gradual and it doesn't get shoved down your throat. It's perhaps in this scene right here, you get a lot of it stacked together. There's a lot of decisions and a lot of you see a lot of the end result of the fruit of her labor. But I still think you get an idea that there is more to the story, and there's still more to learn, and there's still more growing to be had. And who knows how it's going to end?
Right.
She's also
at this point in the movie,
responsibility for her friend. Like that's asking a lot of a kid to not only taking responsibility of yourself, but your friend behaved badly, and you associate with them. Therefore, it is your duty to rectify.
Sen has arrived, sir. She'll be with you in just a few minutes.
And still groveling to him.
It's costing us a fortune. So suck up to him and get every last.
It's just such a detail thing, but did Yubaba's sister have different jewels on her fingers? I was trying to see if I could tell.
I believe you're
I think
correct.
they may have different colors. Yeah, that's really the only difference.
Familiar?
I hope so. Yeah.
Very cool.
Now get in there.
Yeah, I think just either the sequence of colors or just all of them are different, maybe.
Will Sen be all right in there by herself?
The chest gem though, like the necklace gem, that was red though, I think.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, that sounds right. What a room.
And just that pan across from Chihiro over to No Face.
No Face
all the
became
carcasses.
an Akira.
It's delicious.
Want some gold?
Oh, that goopy sound every time he moves is just.
Mm-hmm.
Come closer, Sin. What would you like? Just name it.
I would like to leave, sir. I have someplace I need to go to right away, please. You should go back to where you came from. Yubaba doesn't want you in the bathhouse any longer. Where is your home? Don't you have any friends or family?
No. I'm lonely. I'm lonely.
It's such an interesting argument for her to make at that point too. Like, don't you have any friends and family? When she's coming from a place where she's upset about not having friends and family.
Right.
Like, she's going.
Yeah.
That's where she's arriving to a new place where she doesn't know anybody, and even the place where she was coming from. Like, she finally got a bouquet of flowers, and her most treasured sort of possession is that card that says, like, "I'm gonna miss you."
I was saving this for my parents, but I think you'd better have it.
It's weird to think after all he's done, now he starts to get gross.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Barfing.
There's some pretty gnarly body horror in this movie, like outside of the whole turning a baby into a mouse, but like this.
Yeah, there's some Cronenberg or Carpenter, early Carpenter thing going on here.
Even the moment where it's showing a little bit of blood, it's like really like globulin blood. Like, it's really sort of gratuitous a little bit.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, and even the tears too. Her tears when she was crying earlier were these big, thick, sort of exaggerated tears.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody in this world so freaked out by all things human. If it's her smell or her blood or it's all unnatural in that space.
The way No Face scrambles around corners is just so upsetting with that momentum on his back end, just swinging him around. It's beautiful,
leaving a
but
trail
it's
of goop.
horrifying. Oh.
I love the ad of people getting like the elevator stopping just.
Oh, no, that's an esophagus.
There's another line. Now that's an esophagus.
That's a dub. That's another dub.
Is that a dub?
For sure.
Yeah. You don't bring in John Ratzenberger. You don't give him one-liners.
He gets more pathetic as like more people see what he's actually like in the chase. He gets more pathetic and small and weak.
Well, he's going back to his blank self too, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call him over.
I wonder why it's this moment that she chose to put on her original clothes underneath her work outfit.
You don't know.
Or is it something that she's always wearing?
He won't hurt us.
I wonder. I'm
I guess
wondering how. He's back to normal.
Was that the frog?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Good to know they're okay.
yeah.
Like if he had been spitting out like
Bones.
acidy skeletons,
a little bit
half
of redemption
digested.
there. In fact, he didn't kill anybody. He just sort of hung on to him for a little bit.
Mm.
I would love to drive one of those bucket things just for an alternative workout.
Right?
I was gonna say, like, it seems like a good core kind of.
Oh, yeah.
As someone who loves video games, this scene always reminded me of Wind Waker, Zelda Wind Waker, where it's just on a vast ocean and a tiny little boat. So cute.
Mm-hmm.
vast ocean and a tiny little boat is my nightmare.
Yeah,
I don't want to pull back the curtain too much, but that is a very specific fear of mine.
I'd say this is task 3 of her Herculean tasks of now being an adult and trying to navigate adults using transportation, which I think is a super intimidating thing for a kid to do by themselves.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the first time you travel anywhere by yourself is, I mean, if it's a school bus or anything, like that's a moment.
He'd like to come too, please.
And this is just the image of these two on the train. I think it's on the thumbnail for this video.
Yeah.
It's just
spooky
Wes Anderson style.
Any of these people, an identity, including the ticket master, conductor of the train.
But it's another example of world building without telling you what's happening. Like, your critical theory person is just up in the chair right now trying to figure out, like, is this like is she dead? Is this a symbolism for purgatory? Like, what's going on here? You're on a train, where are they going? That sort of thing. But like, I don't know that this work is saying that. I don't think this is some sort of afterlife metaphor. It just is another world.
Yeah, and part of it is like, what do you need it to mean, man? Like,
right. And as someone who's used a lot of public transportation, you get on a train, whether you're sitting or standing, everyone there has a purpose and a destination. But you don't necessarily know what it is or care. They're faceless to you. They have things to do, things they have to do. They have their own responsibilities, but you're trapped in your own little bubble, or you have your own set of things that you have to accomplish, and thus they may as well not have a face. They may as well not have a name.
No, that's great. I mean, the idea that everybody's coming from somewhere and going somewhere else, but the only thing you know is that one little slice of sitting next to them on a train.
And after seeing them depart, they'll never enter your thoughts again, most likely. And I've been in countless scenarios too, where I was sitting on an empty train as you pass by neon lights and lost in your own thoughts, or thinking about what you have to do next, or where you have to get off.
It's very melancholy. It's not sad.
Yeah. And you can take it in so many ways. It's either, I believe, different types of people would take that scene in many, many different ways. Right. But it's powerful nonetheless.
Yeah, and again, I think the feeling is more important than the substance of it, right? Like the subtext as opposed to the actual text.
And I think that the way that the music was added to the scene as well kind of gives it a feeling of, it's not trying to guide you to where it wants you to go. It's still leaving it open-ended, even with the musical selection. Just it's more describes the beauty of the surroundings than sort of the ominousness of an empty train in the evening.
Totally.
I'm going to go with the melancholy of a child realizing she's no longer a child. That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, and Final
Nick, what do you got?
Right?
Let's go around the horn. What do you make of the train scene, Kenny?
So what? This whole mess is her fault. And now she's run away from here. She's even abandoned her own parents.
That's such a good question, but I do feel that, like, to have accomplished so much in this world here that we're in right now, but to be in that train where time sort of stands still and you can only be at one with your thoughts, I think that was her time to reflect upon what she has done, where she is going, and then once she arrives, it's sort of back to the grind and back to wherever stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 4 is of this journey of hers. And I think there has to be sort of that peacefulness in the transition for her to reflect and recognize the accomplishments that she's made up to that point, and the friend that she's even made.
Just a quiet moment of realize, like taking in the entire journey while she's in the middle of it. Kind of.
Yeah, I think so, and I think again, it wasn't really had you remembered, the opening scene, or you'd worried about her parents, or the real world. I don't think that at any point in time was shown that Crane, of course, remembering that. I think it had everything to do with the journey that she was currently on with No Face, and the hippopotamus mouth guy, and I think that it was I don't know. It was a fantastical loading screen of an RPG almost, where it's like, you're changing from bit 2 to 3, and it was. I don't want to say there wasn't a huge significance to it, because there is significance in there not being significance, but I do think that before every huge occurrence, there has to be that moment of reflection so that you can plan your next move of attack. And I think that it was a moment of reflection, a moment of where am I going, what am I doing, who am I, and a little bit of self-identity, perhaps. I don't know.
Could be anything.
I don't know. I'm trying to cross-reference what it was like when I was alone in the train going a far distance. And so many times when, maybe I had wrestled a match in front of 20,000 people, 12,000 people, or whatever, and then I was alone on a Shinkansen just to the next town late at night, just wondering what did it all mean, and in my broken body, what's the next step? What did it, in the grand scheme of things, what did this mean? Did I make the right sacrifice? What is the next town gonna think? Where to tomorrow? Where to a week from now? Where to a year from now? It's I think as a viewer, you have to really just make the call yourself, because how she carries the weight of what just happened and what needs to be done, I guess only Miyazaki knows, and she's not saying much about it. So you have to come up with the reasoning on your own.
Beautifully put.
That's great. And how you connect to it is up to you.
Right. And how there's still sort of this mysterious relationship as well between No Face and her. But yet you accept that they are not against one another, but together in this journey.
Chihiro or Sen is probably the closest thing No Face has to a friend, because she's the only one who's actually been authentic to him.
Mm-hmm. Or at least offered an opinion or a desire that was against the masses.
Mm-hmm. And then back into the world of whimsy.
Mm-hmm.
Of a bowing streetlight.
Wonder if that's a subtle dig at Pixar.
Oh yeah, the lamp, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Similar sound
it's
too.
Like, oh, you guys have cute lamps, huh?
Yeah.
I have a cute lamp too.
I mean, I remember when I got the DVD / Blu-ray of Spirited Away for the first time. It was the Disney release, and John Lasseter of Pixar was the one who was like, "Hey, I thought that this was really cool, so I wanted to bring it to the West." So I was like, "Oh, there is a tie there of like Pixar being inspired by Miyazaki's work."
I like the little detail there too of Chihiro really not even registering this bouncing lantern, but No Face was like, what just happened? What's happening? was that?
She's unfazed.
Exactly. She's already grown a little too accustomed to these strange things happening all around her.
Come on.
So you all made it.
And who hasn't had to scoot into a door quickly before it closes?
Excuse me, ma'am. Haku stole this from
Yeah, now I'm just looking at her rings. It looks like they're all green.
Yeah.
I see.
Nope, never mind.
Do you have any
I do think they're in a different order. I think it's similar colors, but they're different order.
Mm-hmm. That may be an Easter egg. You know, that's there purposely.
That's something I'm going to need some screen grabs for.
Mm-hmm.
The protective spell is gone.
That was
I'm sorry. You mean that
so
slug that was on your seal? I think I squashed
understatedly gorgeous when she bows her head and the ponytail pops forward and then the birdie pulls the little strands.
My sister put that slug in Haku so she
There's
could
no
control
one would
him.
critique the scene for not having that, but to add it like that just takes it to a whole other level.
What happened to my spell? Only love can break it. Come now.
Can you please turn these two back into their normal forms?
The spell on those two wore off long ago. Change back if you want. I don't get along with my sister.
The
And
baby
now
head.
he's finally been put to work.
He's had his own journey. He's left the little room, the cushioned room.
And now he's eating a responsible portion and getting back to work. Becomes some.
The way things are. You'll have to help your parents and Haku on your own. Use what you remember about them.
What? Can't you please give me more of a hint than
That-
that? I met Haku before, but it was a long time ago.
I do love that she's sort of speaking for us at this point too. It's like, can you please just tell me what's going on?
It just takes a while for your memories to return. While you're thinking, the boys and I are going to make you something, and I want you to call me Granny from now on.
Such a sweet old lady in this. Even like, you could tell when you first met her, when she showed up, she wasn't as sort of mean as Yubaba, but she wasn't downright sweet. Like, she still had an edge to her.
Right.
But here she's like, just call me Granny.
Yeah, and I think that's more of a taken from Eastern Japanese culture where, you know, you would say, you know, please call me Ba-chan. And that's what you would call someone that you'd work for if they were of that age and you had a relationship to them that way, in that way. But I don't know if it would be that way here. I think I would still call them Mr. or Mrs., you know, insert name here.
I mean, I think that's definitely a cultural thing too, because I know,
Absolutely.
like,
I think so.
from my family background, it's like if my friends are over, you're gonna, you know, you'll call my grandmother your grandmother if you feel comfortable doing so, and she won't bat an eyelid, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's
those
more,
sorts of similarities.
Yeah, I think in Western culture, it's much more family to family preference, whereas it's more universal in Japan to call someone of that age, you know, Ba-chan. Oh, all of this glory. Majestic.
Thank goodness. You're alive. I can't believe it. How did it happen?
Ah, that's love for you.
Look, Granny. Haku's alive.
Haku, I will forgive you for stealing.
What's also interesting about this movie, and I think telling about Chihiro's journey in general, is it's hard to tell if we're close to the end of this movie or not. Like, you know that she's developed and she's, you know, she's progressed as a character in a lot of ways, but I still think she comes off as the same girl from the beginning. She's just sort of empowered in a different way now. But yeah, I mean, this movie could be, I mean, we've got about 10 minutes left in the movie, but I mean, there could be another 45 minutes for all I know at this point. Like, it's hard to tell. And I think that's an interesting way to structure a story about this, because when you're in the middle of a journey of any kind, you don't really know when it's going to be over.
Right.
Which is a kind of a fascinating way to tell the story.
think that goes back to the episodic nature of something like the Greek, the Odyssey, where everything is tied together loosely. These otherwise episodes that are unrelated to each other with the through line of a character just trying to get home. So it feels very much like, a Japanese The Odyssey.
Haku, listen. I just remembered something from a long time ago. I think it may help you. Once when I was little, I dropped my shoe into a river. When I tried to get it back, I fell in. I thought I'd drowned, but the water carried me to shore. It finally came back to me. The river's name was the Kohaku River. I think that was you, and your real name is Kohaku River.
Are those all those flower petals that he was
protective work? Yeah,
that he used in the beginning.
I thought they were seashells.
I mean,
it's whatever spell. When we first meet him, and he said, "I'll distract him to try to let her run away."
Oh, you're right. You're right.
It was the same stuff, right?
A river spirit?
Yeah, you're right.
My name is the Kohaku River.
They filled in that river. It's all apartments now.
That must be why I can't.
It's all apartments now.
I remember you falling into my river, and I remember your little pink shoe.
So you were the one who carried me back into shallow water. You saved me. I knew you were good.
Some more of these otherworldly tears.
Yeah.
Something so beautiful about them falling in reverse, though, because they're so happy.
Tears falling up. It's also is something really nice about memory and remembering your experience and where you've come from and the things that have happened to you being connected to your name and your identity and all of that. Whatever journey you're on, like the thing that will keep you grounded and keep you yourself is memory. Just nothing but sweet lessons from this movie.
Yeah.
Mama! My baby! Are you traumatized? Did they do terrible things to you?
Are you traumatized? That feels like a translation of something that's a little more. Were you traumatized? Is not. I
can almost guarantee that was not direct translation. There's no way. No way.
It is always wild though, because if you're watching and you're like, oh, this is why dubs are quote unquote inferior to the original Japanese, but they also are met with the difficult decision to be like, we have to have a line read that matches for the length of them moving their lips. So how do we fill that gap? Which is like, you know what? Hats off to you for doing that, because you still got the vibe you're going for, but man, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, it's an art, right? Like doing it correctly and in a way that translates the original intent is tough.
And I think to take it back to how she babied him so much in the beginning, that was the appropriate line as well.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. It doesn't feel incorrect coming from her, right? Like by her saying it, it's just not a very common phrase.
It's kind of clunky. And then we have our final heroes test.
If you get it right, you can all go home.
And again, the way it's staged, there's different tiers of people watching. Everybody's gathered.
Mm-hmm.
There must be a mistake. None of these pigs are my mom or dad.
None of them? Is that really your answer?
Mm-hmm.
Ah!
It's actually a really great way for her to pass the test too, because it wasn't like, hey, this is a trick question, you're trying to trick me. It was, I think there's a mistake here.
Get out of my sight.
Thanks.
And then a thanks for everything, for all she's been through. She can still muster a thanks for everything on her way out the door.
They're there now, and they're looking for you.
And now we have the biggest question I have and have had ever since I watched this. Did Chihiro what did she learn, and did she become a different person? And we'll revisit that once the credits roll.
Fine, I got my name back.
Will we meet again sometime?
Sure we will.
Promise?
Promise. Now go, and don't look back.
There's always that. Back. Yeah, the don't look back is such that one final challenge.
It's like the Orpheus myth. It's literally a myth in the Bible. Like people looking back and then they fail this thing when they were so close to success.
Chihiro! Where have you been? Hurry up!
Her folks are just there going, "What took you so long?"
Big trouble.
Admonishing her for,
"You're in big trouble."
Thanks, Kamish. Just thinking about turning back. So your question is, has she changed? Is she a new person? Like,
right?
When she first showed up? I mean, you can argue that no, she's not, because both upon entering and upon leaving, she looked back and hesitated before moving forward. So there's the similar energy that she's got, just for two very different reasons.
There's her holding on. I don't think it's looking back. I think it's her holding on to her mother's arm. It feels like, I don't think that she's failed any sort of grand test. I just think that she learned a lot, but at the end of the day, she's still a kid. That's the vibe I got.
Well, I mean, the only thing that's changed, because her parents aren't, they're not aware of anything. Like, they didn't learn any lessons, or they're exactly the same as they were to begin with. So it's, there wasn't anything changing there. Literally, the only thing that's changed outside is time has passed, because everything's overgrown. Which, were they in there for months? Like, all the grass and the cobwebs and everything.
It is a bit scary.
I think I can handle it.
Wonderful message.
I think she can handle it. I agree. I think you can too, Chihiro. Well, Kenny, what did you think? Is it held up after all this time?
Absolutely. No, I mean, of course it did. And knowing that I was going to see it for, I guess a third time now, but after my experiences in Japan, I was able to see it through new eyes. And I didn't go in with any preconceived notions. I didn't use any of my previous viewings to sort of influence how I looked at it today. And I found a lot of new ways to appreciate the story. And I kind of saw myself trying to put myself in a scenario where, okay, if I was 12 or 13 or 14, maybe 15, at the end, would I expect, one final dragon chase scene, or would I maybe expect her to have a more physical fight with No Face when No Face was a big globulous monster? And I'm looking at it now, and I think back then, and this is 20 years ago already, I don't think I expected it. And I think that I was just as satisfied as I was back then as I was now, because, I mean, there's a reason why I let you guys know this is in probably my top 3 of all time. And yeah, it absolutely held up. So I couldn't, it's amazing to have so many pieces that could have been directed in complete other directions. For example, you had a flying dragon that was injured, that was, and that could have led to some sort of epic battle scene. And I would have been happy with that too. But for me to be just as satisfied to not have that and just have a very epic musical score and an emotional final flight with the person that saved her from drowning was just as good.
Yeah, there's not much in the movie that's begging for it to be bigger or grander or more epic or anything,
Right.
because ultimately that's not what the story's about, right? The story's about a kid going through some trials and growing up a little bit or changing or at the very least just seeing things in a different light, which is a thing that everybody does or needs to do at a certain age, and it's a thing that happens whether you're ready for it or not.
I think you guys called it correctly where it's like, oh, go ahead, sorry. I was going to say, I think it's when the way she grips her mother's arm when she goes back through the tunnel, I believe that served the purpose to show that, one, yeah, she's still a child. And I think, two, it's one of those things where if you focus hard enough on something, it stops you from doing another. And that was, in this case, from her looking back through the tunnel, or from her letting go and dashing back to go see her friends on the other side. So I think this is less, and I might get just destroyed for saying this, but I think this is less a coming of age story, and I think it's more of a how strong you can be in your childhood, and this is more of clearing hurdles and a show of strength of character and a development of that character appropriate to your age, to show just how much you can accomplish as a child. Not that she is now, 13 going on 30, as they say, but that she was however old she was in the film, and Miyazaki was able to show us just how capable people of that age can be and what amazing things they can accomplish, even at a young age like that.
Yeah.
And I guess how
totally
people rise beyond their years, just dependent on their experiences and dependent on what kind of experiences they are thrust into. Whether it be by choice or by force.
Yeah. No, I love the idea of her hanging on to her mother as a way to help her from looking back. Like as a way to continue to move forward. Like I think that's great.
Yeah.
Nick, did we answer your question? What?
Yeah, I just think it's such an interesting point in the movie. So I just wanted to know what you guys think about it, because I think it is ultimate. I think a lot of Western media has conditioned us to say our character needs to have an arc. They need to be different than when they began the movie. But I don't know that that's the case for Chihiro. I think she's always had this in her, but I think it took external factors to force those things to come out. And we just got to witness those things coming out, it's nice.
I think we saw just how flexible she is in a situation of huge duress, and for a child and for a lot of people, moving from one place to another, especially when you have no friends, and just the family that you have around you, no siblings as far as we know, pets, I don't think. We don't know, right? I think we just got a sense of what she'll be able to handle in this new environment, which is, I guess, everything and anything.
Yeah. Flexible emotionally and flexible in the sense that she scorpioned a couple of times throughout the adventure.
Physically. Yeah, I mean, she showed sort of how courageous she can be in a situation when it's fight or flight, running down the storm pipe, whatever, climbing that huge ladder. Yeah, there's numerous occasions where it was, of course, any one of us in this room right now could climb a ladder, but a lot of people, if they have a fear of heights, or if you didn't actually have to, wouldn't want to climb that ladder or hide in a windowsill, or you know what I mean? It was I think it was just a very educational journey for her to know more about herself, what she's capable of, and that she knows that she's well equipped to deal with this new situation of being in this new town, having to start completely fresh.
Yeah. I dig it. I like it. I'm glad we decided that that's what this movie means universally.
We figured it out, Miyazaki.
No.
Let's go ahead.
But the heroes legally. I'm pretty sure I know people are very protective of Miyazaki movies, especially. So I am totally cool with being called an idiot. And I might have missed something that everyone else had seen, and that defies all of my logic, and that is okay. But that's how
Yes, it is 1,000%.
how I look at it and how I feel it. Yeah.
Of course, just kidding. I think the one takeaway from this movie, and I think a lot of his work in general, is what we talked a lot about, which is like, man, like, what does this mean to you? And like, here's just this slice of beautiful filmmaking, and it can mean whatever it needs to mean to you, and it can be as meaningful or as not as you want it to be. Which I think is a mark of just a really great movie that has the potential to be universally loved, like this one does. So,
absolutely,
all that to say, I really enjoyed watching it with you guys. Kenny, thanks for being here, and Nick, thanks for running the show.
Thank you, guys.
And you'll have to let us know what anime you move on to next.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, there's I'm sure there's many of an anime out there. So
yes, weathering with you is coming up next, probably. But that'll do it for us this week. Again, thank you so much for joining us this week, Kenny. Really appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Watch From Home Theater. See you guys later.
Good night, fellas. Bye-bye.
Are we out? Okay. No worries. That was great. Yeah, dude. Thank you for being here. I know it had been we started talking about doing this a while ago, so I really appreciate sticking with it and getting it pulled together. This was a lot of fun. I honestly just watched this movie for the first time over the weekend. I had never seen it. Yeah, and so having like fresh eyes on it was interesting too, especially for having a fan that hadn't watched it in a long time.